Did you know the Rio Grande Valley held the last battle during the American Civil War? Well, many significant historic skirmishes have happened in the RGV, which brings us to the Battle of Puebla and the part our area played in the victorious Cinco de Mayo. Cameron County Commissioner Gene Fernandez explains.
Brenda, we're here in the shadow of the Brownsville-Matamoros Bridge of 1910, but the key word today is Cinco de Mayo. What is Cinco de Mayo? If you go out there and you ask the person on the street what it is, you're probably going to get an answer that may well be wrong. They're going to say, well, it's Mexican Independence Day. No, it's not right. Mexican Independence Day is actually 16 de septiembre. The Cinco de Mayo date in 1862 marked the victory of the Battle of Puebla. The Battle of Puebla was a very, very decisive moment in Mexico's fight with the French. There was a struggle in Mexico, a civil war that was over the question of the church versus state. Now that emptied the treasury. What happened? They defaulted on their debt to the foreign powers being Spain, France, and England. Well, those three parties showed up on the shores of Mexico to reclaim their debt. England and Spain made a settlement, but France had a nefarious motive. What they did is that they said they tied this in to the war that was going on at the time, the Civil War in the United States. Now, the Monroe Doctrine actually states that the European powers cannot come over here and set up camp and start their colonies. Well, they knew that the United States was involved in a war, and they took that advantage of the time. And the plan could have opened up that if they were victorious in Mexico, they would have joined with the Confederates, and all of that would have gone its route. What was called the French Insurrection was a very, very hard time for Mexico, because the French actually wanted to set up a puppet throne with Maximilian I. The Mexicans would not have it. That victory that happened in Puebla gave them the momentum, gave them the spirit in order to go forward and to continue the battle, which ended up victoriously. As the Civil War was winding down, a lot of other events were happening in Mexico in favor of the Mexicans. In 1865, Maximilian and his crew were nabbed, and he was executed. At that point in time, the Civil War was over in the United States, and it was just prior to that that Lincoln already had a mind in order to focus on Mexico. And of course, we lost him. President Johnson carried on that thought. That's where Brownsville comes in the picture, because you had Ulysses S. Grant came right here to Brownsville, along with his other general, Philip Sheridan, and they built a bridge across the Rio Grande here to Matamoros. They also built a bridge out on Boca Chica Beach to get heavy armament in and troops on in order to join in the war with Mexico against the French. Now, the French saw this ominous on the horizon, so they started retreating. But it was the effort in the battlefield of the Mexicans that expulsed the French. We have to note that. The particular situation that existed at that point in time could have given South Texas another title. We're known as the site for the last battle of the Civil War. We could have been known worldwide as the last battle for the independence of Mexico over France, or more ominously, the first battle for the Franco-American War in Mexico. An interesting side note that links Brownsville even further to this is the music that you have in the background is a waltz that was written in 1862 by Aniceto Ortega. He was the founder of School of Music in Mexico City. It was paying homage to General Zaragoza. General Zaragoza was a revered figure in Mexico. He unfortunately died about 2 years later. But that particular music carried on to be the national hymn of Mexico. Of further significance, the great-great-granddaughter of that composer lives in Brownsville, and she's my wife, Patricia. And the rest is history. For KVEO News, I'm Eugene Fernandez.
And we have a complete library of Throwback Thursdays history reports. Just log on to our website. That's valleycentral.com.